Hi and welcome to this week's update of MakeTile. So this week I've got the first implementation of roofs to show you, and I've also got a couple of other minor features to show you, the main one being that you can now change the colours of your materials so you can see things a little bit better when you're doing your layouts. I also want to talk a bit about the workflow when you're using MakeTile to create complex layouts and buildings and dungeons and things like that, and how you can keep everything moving quickly and swiftly so that stuff doesn't slow down a lot and freeze. Okay, so I'm going to start off by opening up my MakeTile menu and deleting the old default cube. And I'm going to stay in viewport shading mode for now, and I'm going to come down here and we've got a new tile type, which is roof. Okay, so if I just leave the defaults as they are, click on MakeTile, you can see we have a new roof. By default, I'm just going to go into bottom view. What this does is it creates a solid roof. Just switch on a couple of options so I can see everything a bit better. So it creates a solid block of a roof with a separate roof top, and then this sort of gables goes all the way through. And this is how the default tiles are set up in the tile templates for the OpenLock system. Now this is, fine. You could do it like this, but personally, I don't particularly like this. I think this isn't a great way of creating a roof because you're wasting a lot of material here. So I'm just going to delete that, and I'll start going through the options and show you how we can make this into something which is a little more practical from a not using all your filament point of view. Right. So first thing first is we have the option to either draw the gables and the rooftop, or just draw the gables, or just draw the rooftop. And down here we've got the roof footprint control. So by default that's 4x8 like you just saw, and that's 4 inches by 8 inches here. And you have a base bottom socket control here, which can be open, lock, or none. Now, I think what makes more sense is if you create a rooftop in this way. So I'm going to turn that to 0.5. That's 0.5 inches, which is the standard width of a open lock wall. I'm going to turn off draw rooftop for the moment. I'm going to click on MakeTile. Okay, and that's going to draw just this gable, just the gable end. So if I do that again, create another one, I'm just going to turn on snapping, absolute grid snap. I'm just going to grab this and move that up here. Actually, I'll rotate that by 180. And I'm rotating that because if you look here, we've got the socket on the bottom. I want that to be oriented in the right direction. So we've now got a roof, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I'm going to turn off draw gables, turn on draw rooftop, and set that to 6. And click on MakeTile. And now we have a separate rooftop and gables. Okay, and I think that's a much more sensible way of generating a rooftop, and this will be OpenLock compatible as well. Okay, so let's go through these controls, the other controls. So we have roof pitch. So if I turn that to 55 degrees, then we get a much steeper roof. Positive end eaves and negative end eaves are how far out the roof will jut on the ends. So if I click on MakeTile, then that's going out further than on this one. Okay, roof thickness is the thickness of the rooftop, and then side eaves and base height. So base height is this, how high this sort of straight bit is on your gables. Okay, and then the side eaves is the sort of the corresponding height of this bit here for the rooftop. So if I change the base height to 0.3, sorry, 0.4, because otherwise you won't really see the difference. Click on MakeTile. Then you can see this base here is now bigger, but the side eaves are still, the same amount of time. Whereas if I now change this to 0.4 and let's delete that, change that back to 0.4, then they're now the same sort of size. So obviously, if you're intending to print your roof as a single piece, you should keep these the same, because that means that you don't have to have supports anywhere. But if you're printing your roof as two separate pieces like this, then you can just, have these as different numbers. So the next control is the subdivision density, and this controls how many times this is subdivided on creation. So if I change that to 0.4 and to low, to 4, to low, MakeTile, you can see that it's been subdivided less times than this one. And that sort of controls the overall poly count. The other tiles, the older tiles, like the sort of the straight wall tile, you have a control which has native subdivisions, and that does the same thing, but it doesn't sort of update automatically. So you have to remember to set this depending on the size of your tile. I'm going to go back and I'm going to convert these over to the same sort of system as is on the roofs, where you just have low, medium, high, and it updates depending on the size of the tile, because that's just a quality of life improvement. I'm just going to come back to my roof, and the last setting is the inset distance. And if I just hide that bit, look at this from above. So the inset distance is the distance from the origin, which is here, to the actual tile itself, and this allows me to have space for the actual displacement material. So if this is 0, then it's going to be generated exactly on the origin. The problem of doing it like that is that you don't have space for your displacement material. So when you sort of add this as a roof to an actual building, there's going to be issues with it not being exactly the right size for the walls and whatnot. So let's make a building. Let's just quickly do that, and I can show you some of the other stuff and talk about some of the ways you can control things and the workflow that's best to use with MakeTile so that things stay working and stay moving quickly. So I'm just going to delete all this. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to create a U-wall to start with, and have this 2.5 inches tall. My end wall length is going to be 4, and like I was talking earlier, I'm going to have to change this. So that is 30 Y1. That should be probably somewhere around 20, and don't need those to be so big, and don't want there to be a base. Okay, and I think that's about right. So I'm just going to make my U-wall. Okay, so this is going to be, yeah, so that's fine. So I'm just going to make another one. Move it up to there. I reckon about that size. Yeah, that'll be little cottage. So I now need to make 2 straight walls, which are going to be 4 inches. So straight wall. And 2.5, was it 3? 2.5. Oop. 4. So that's the sort of the floor plan of my house. Now you'll notice that as I'm laying this out, I'm staying in viewport shading mode. I'm not in EV mode, I'm not in cycles, and that's just to keep everything moving quickly. So I want to always be in sort of the mode which is going to draw as fast as possible. Because we're dealing with real geometry, we can't use most of the tricks you normally use when you're 3D modeling to keep poly counts low, and also to keep materials simple, because these are dynamic materials. So these are being sort of calculated in the background. And that means that things will slow down no matter how powerful your computer is if you make lots of stuff 3D in the scene at any one time. So I'm just going to go back to viewport shading mode, and looking at this, I need to turn off a couple of pegs which aren't generating exactly the right place at the moment. It looks like when I've got a small wall on my U-walls, so I'll have to look at that later. Right, okay, so let's create the actual roof, and it's going to be 5. It's going to be 0.5. I'm going to keep it as a 45-degree pitch. I'm going to keep those as defaults, and I'm going to make the base a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to go 0.1 is probably fine. That was back on 0, so I didn't want that to be there, so I need to change that again to 0.1, and that's 5, and that's 0.5. Base bottom open lock. Okay, right, so I'm just going to grab that, move that up, and make tile. Just rotate that around so that the socket is pointing in the right direction. Okay, so there's the sort of the basis of our house. Right, so I could add sort of doors and windows using the asset manager if I wanted to, so let's just quickly do that. Okay, so now I've got everything laid out and in the places where I want it. I'm going to switch over to the Eevee rendering engine so that we can start seeing our textures. Right, okay, so you can see that it's added the default sort of stone texture to both the walls and the rooftop here. Obviously we don't want that, so I'm just going to come down here, set my basic stone texture, and I'm going to go over to the custom image texture. Now currently there aren't any sort of procedural roof tile textures in MakeTile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this custom image material. I'm going to use a image which I've downloaded for free from cc0textures.com. So I'm just going to come down here to the material options, click on open, come down to my textures, cc roof tiles, select this displacement texture. That's not going to display properly to start with, so what I need to do is come down here to the material mapping options, and I'm going to click on wraparound, and that will let that texture display properly on this roof. So these tiles are a little bit small, so I'm just going to scale them a little bit, and then I don't want there to be sort of, this edge of half tiles, or quarter tiles or eighths of tiles or whatever. So I'm just going to change the location slightly, something like that. Yeah, that's about right. So there we go. So those are in the right place. Now I'm not going to make this 3D yet because that will slow everything down. So quite happy with that. What about this? Let's have a look at this. Now the defaults for the basic stone material actually have a slight difference between the stone sizes on if they're going along the x-axis or as if they're going along the y-axis. So I just want to correct that. So I'm going to change that scale there to 0.5. And you can see that now our stones are sort of the same type of width on both the X and the Y axis. Okay, right. So I'm quite happy with that. But there's something missing. Haven't done a floor. So let's do a floor, shall we? So I'm just going to go back to viewport shading mode. I'm going to hide that. And I'm just going to press Shift and S, move the cursor to the world origin, and 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be 4 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 4 by 6. Five, and yeah, that's fine. And just move that over to there. And remember, this is gonna, you know, when the displacements material displaces, will displace inwards as well. So this will, you know, all match up. Okay, right. So here we go. Oh yes, and there we go. Good job I did that, because obviously I don't want that doorway to be there, do I? Yep, that's the wrong one. So here we go. So let's make sure that's aligned. And there's a little bit of a glitch here. And that glitch is caused by, there's obviously a problem with this doorway, in that it looks like the cutter is extending too far. So I'm just going to fix that. So I'm going to select the doorway. I'm going to come down here and look for my for this collection. So we've got door frame, we've got doorway bool. Going to make that visible. Select that. And tab into edit mode and just grab those vertices there. Grab all of those vertices and just move that up so it's not cutting through the wall as well. Okay, then I'm just going to hide that. Right, so that's pretty much what I want it to be. Yeah, yeah. Yes, okay, there we go. Right. Anything else I want to change before I start making stuff 3D? I don't need these pegs, do I? So let's take those off. Same on that side. Take those off. Right. So I'll go back to textured mode. And I am going to start by making my roof 3D. Okay, quite happy with that. Let's make each of the gable ends 3D. That's there. That's there. Okay, and then let's make that 3D. Make that 3D. Okay, so things are just beginning to slow down a little bit on my computer now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, right, that's enough making stuff 3D for now. I'm going to start exporting these, and then I'm going to sort of change these back to preview and then do the other bits. So I'm just going to select my rooftop, come down here to the exporter, turn off randomize because I don't want there to be any random variance. Keep voxelize on, keep decimate on, Have a look at my decimation settings. I'm going to put planar decimation back on. I can probably decimate this a bit more than it is. And I'm just going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this house. And click on export tile. Okay, and this is going to take a while because it's going to voxelize everything, so it's going to reconstruct it out of tiny little cubes, which actually I didn't really need to do for this, for the roof. I could have just left it as it was, but never mind. It's then going to decimate it, so it's then going to simplify that mesh, and it's then going to run a little fixed non-manifold thing over it where it just looks for errors in the mesh and tries to fix those. Okay, so that's that was in real time and that's exported out. So let's just, because it's a good idea to do this, let's just check and see what happened there. So I'm going to go to and there we go. That's the roof. Now, when I import it, it's enormous because MakeTile rescales stuff on export, so it appears to be the right size when it's on your slicer, because Blender uses a different scale by default. But yeah, so that seems to have worked, so I'm just going to delete that. And come back down here. And now I can return that to preview. And that just reduces the number of sort of polygons which are live in my scene. Okay, so I'm happy that everything is working, that those export defaults are, you know, roughly the right, and that nothing's sort of slowing it down too much. So I'm just going to select the tiles which I've made 3D already. So that's these ones. I'm going to come down to my export, and I'm just going to export them all in one lot. Just going to click on export tile. And this really will take a while. Okay, and they've all been exported. And again, I'm just going to check that they've come in, they've gone out all right. So that's you all. Right, and here we go. So they're looking fine. Let's just check these. Yeah, that's okay. And what I'm doing here is, sometimes when you voxelize stuff and decimate it and use the fixed non-manifold, something will go wrong and you'll end up with errors in your mesh. I just want to make sure that these are actually, you know, these are looking okay. And they are. If I just tab into edit mode, you can see that this has all been sort of simplified reasonably. Right, okay, so let's just delete all of these out. So I can return those to preview. And I'm just going to hide my roof so I can see what's going on. And now I need to do to make these bits 3D as well. So these are my my window and my door on this side. So I'm going to make these 3D. And looking at them, they need to be slightly higher subdivision. So that's 3, so that's 4 there. And then I'm going to select that and turn that back down to 3 and make that 3D. Again, that one probably needs to be up to 4 as well. Yeah, that's better. And I didn't do this bit, so I'm just going to make that 3D. You can see that things are slowing down because we've got lots of polygons in the scene. So even though this is a, you know, tiny little simple bit, it's taking forever to make this 3D. So, okay. And yeah, pretty happy with that. I just want to actually edit that slightly, and it's going to go into, I'm just going to grab that, turn off snap. Just move those in a little bit because there we go. Okay. So now I'm just going to export this tile. Okay. And let's just return all this to preview. And last but not least, let's do all of these. Right, and export. Now, if I wanted to, I could have actually exported these tiles without making them 3D in MakeTile in Blender first, and that would have worked as well. But I just wanted to sort of, have a look at how things were looking in 3D, mostly to do with the subdivisions, to make sure that everything was sort of subdivided roughly the same amount of times, so that you didn't have some bits which were like really detailed and other bits where that detail was a bit washed out. Okay. Right, so that should be everything. I'm just going to save this and make sure I save it not there. Where are we going? Health. And I'm just going to create a new file and just import all of those STLs. And just make sure everything is looking fine. There we go. Yeah, so I'm happy with that. I've not done the floor just because I've got millions of slates of, these tiled floors already. I don't really need to make yet another one. So yeah, so there we go. So that's how you can, create a building with a roof using MakeTile now. And I think that looks pretty cool. Obviously, there's still a few glitches, which are to do with the displacement system. So this ridge tile along here is not necessarily perfect. You might want to play around with the location of the tiles a little bit more than I did, just to get rid of that roughness up there. And there's, there aren't chimneys at the moment, something which I will add later. I'll add some chimney models, and what I'll probably also do is actually just add a few ridge tile models, which are just static models you can just plonk onto roofs just to cover up these seams a little bit. Right, so that's the roofs, and that's how you can create a house, and that's a little bit of, sort of workflow advice and tips for you. So the next couple of sets of roofs will be ones which are, how do I put this? Set of roofs will be ones which are sort of, like this. So sort of double roofs, nadir roofs, if you want. And then also ones which are just, just a single sloping edge here, like, going along like that, rather than being an apex roof. And that creates the first set of roofs and will give you quite a few options. And then I'm going to move on to doing some interior walls, some S walls. Right, that's almost everything. The last thing I just wanted to show you was the sort of the colours, or the ability to change colours on materials. So I need to zoom all the way back in. Just going to switch over to here and go over to Eevee so things are a little bit better. Right, in all of the materials now, there's a base colour option, and you can just change this, and that just changes the colour of your tile. So this is more so that you can, if you want to, create a layout and you're having difficulty seeing where everything is, you can just change the colours of the different materials. It's not really intended to make things look really wonderful in renders or anything like that. It's just for making it more obvious where different bits are. So, if we want to create our create a roof. And we have that as the, the custom image material. And now we just want it to be obvious that this is going to be a tiled roof. Then we can just change that color quickly, and it just gives you a little bit of an idea of what's going on in the scene. But as I say, it's not intended to do anything fancy. Right, okay, I think I've talked enough for this week. That's quite a long video. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'll be, continuing to work on everything over the next few weeks, and should be able to get the next 2 roof tiles done over the next week or so. Okay, well, that's it for now, and I'll speak to you soon.